Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Reality One. This episode, we're going to go for a hike in the mountains, probably by a lake. Like the couple episodes before this, we've got a special guest. Today's guest is DL. She's a fellow nomad from Florida. How's it going, DL?
Great. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Now, with that enthusiastic entrance, we're going to get started. Again, for you guys who are new for the podcast, just a little sentence in Reality One. What is Reality One? What's this podcast? So what we do is we help explain and explore practical use cases of augmented reality. A lot of people have never heard of this term. They think maybe, does that sound like virtual reality? What is the difference? I don't know what it's going to do in my life. We're going to go through practical use cases when we go through a day in the life. And for you guys who are coming from the previous episode, we just hit the library. We returned a couple books and we went to see what augmented reality could be in the library. We looked at the future of storytelling. We looked at the future of libraries, what it could look like as a whole. And today we are going to go and do a quick sunset hike, since it's the end of the day. It's getting close to the end of the day. And so DL's going to join us for this hike as we go through. Let's jump straight into the podcast. Let's close our eyes right in the beginning and let's put ourselves in the shoes of the characters. We've woken up, we've gone to the gym, we've gone to the doctors, we've gone to the library to get a bit of knowledge, return some books, and now we're going to set out on a hike. So we get in the car, and the first thing that we're doing is we're driving down the highway. So everybody is seeing this with their eyes closed, or if you visualize with your eyes open. And as you start approaching the hiking place, the first thing that augmented reality could help us with is finding spots. You might be driving down the highway. There's the forest, the woods on both sides. What augmented reality could do is like a flare, or think of a game kind of arrow pointing over a hill. Think of that appearing in the world. Augmented reality works in your context.
I think I've been looking for literally everything.
We're off to a great start over here. So we love this. As we're coming through, we see these like flares of information that are lit up on top of the trail. And
say different things about the hike, tell you different information so you know what you're looking at and what you're getting into.
Yeah, so we could see a lot of information, right? The first thing that we could see is probably like an icon, maybe what sets the hikes apart. Maybe we'll see the difficulty and a little bit of information. The idea is we're not going to get, if you're seeing these things hovering above the real world, remember, there's not a phone in your pocket. This is the real world. We probably don't want to chuck a lot of text, but we want to get enough information as someone driving. How are we going to help make our decision before we get to the hike? So this can be designed in any way, but you can start with icons, maybe how hard the hike is, maybe the time for the hike. Maybe it'll say this hike has a waterfall, this hike has a beautiful view of the sunset. And the AI that's going to be accompanying you can also give you that information based on, again, like the time that you're going to get there or hikes you've enjoyed in the past. Now, this is the first thing that AI is going to help us with, right? From afar, it can show us information before we get there. So we're not just scrolling lists. We're actually seeing those hikes in front of us in the real world. Then as we come closer, we can show the trails. So with augmented reality, we can highlight the actual trail, maybe paint the floor, make it look like you're digitally painting the floor. You could have little digital characters standing outside waiting to show you the hike. They might be your AI that shows you the hike and gives you information about it. And you might have a different guide for each type of hikes. As you come, you might have that whatever the character is that's going to take you on the hike could be waiting for you at that corner that you have to have that turn off into the car park. So we can help with that. So those are the first things, right? We're going to go traveling, adventure, hiking. We're discovering new hikes just as we're driving. And we might not even wanted to do a hike. And as we come along, our system, our AR and our AI knows that we are interested in hiking and might say, hey, there's a quick 40-minute hike over here. And we know that you don't have dinner for another 2 hours. So take a turn off the road right here. You'll have a really fun 40 minutes.
And then it can tell you like, oh, this kind of hike right here. Oh, I know you love waterfall hikes. So you can come sit right here and have your dinner here instead. So exciting.
Yeah, precisely. Actually, yeah, to help you out and say, normally you have dinners at home, here you go. But the cool thing over here is what it's doing is contextually, it's showing us these things that we wouldn't normally maybe plan for, or last minute. We're not necessarily, we might not know that there's a hike on the side. We might have driven this highway our entire life and never known that there's an amazing hike. So contextually, augmented reality sends up that digital flair to let us know that there's that hike. So AI is very good in those kind of things, like highlighting context, highlighting spaces that are far away, finding the places. So we have an episode, I keep forgetting the number, but Follow the Other Big Road. Again, that...
Episode number 7.
Okay. So we actually have a listener that knows the numbers better than I do. But so that idea of Follow the Other Big Road could also show us that way to find that hike or find the parking spots to find it. And actually, that also will help us with like trail markers. I know in Israel, there's tons of hikes and they're all marked by different colors, but some of the times it's missing, worn off, or you're looking for certain patterns in colors. And
I have had so many hikes that I've taken that somehow you're in the middle of the forest and the trail hikers are gone. The markers are gone. You don't know where you are. You don't know where you're going. Oh, the last one I saw was like 50 feet back. It'd be so helpful to have a direct route, know exactly where you're going and be able to see it in front of you.
Yeah, and also think about like at nighttime. Some of these places are not necessarily marked up well at night. Some places are probably not safe to go at night, but even if you wanted to do a night hike, augmented reality could help you find those trails, find those places, and also different parts of the world. I've traveled many countries. You've also hiked many countries, right?
Yes, I have.
And all the trails and everything are like different, right? Some have colors, some have different things. Some have even words, like you go here and you get, 4 kilometers, but...
And then if you don't understand the language, you don't know what you're doing there.
You could miss a great hike. So over here, we could show you that with having trail markers of being able to guide that path for you. And again, like we said, that trail guide, he could be like a really cool character. And actually going back to yesterday's episode, not yesterday's episode, the last episode in the library where we talked about a virtual librarian that could think of ChatGPT where you can give it like an avatar or a being to personify. So the AIs that we're all going to be having soon, as we discussed in the library, we'll have a similar one that takes us down trails. And the visualization of that AI, so again, the knowledge and all the information will be part of that artificial intelligence, but the visualization of that character.
So you have the person or the guide being able to talk back to you and tell you things about the environment or about what you're seeing or the history or whatever it is as you're hiking.
Exactly. They'll be interactive. They'll be like a normal guide. What if let's think about it. We can have a lot of different fun characters, but what kind of characters? I know one thing that I was just thinking about of a character that I would like is, imagine if I was going on a hike and this is a hike that someone has done in the past, like a famous person. So imagine if my guide, he's not just like some cute little starfish or floating ball.
He's like somebody who has toured this place 700 times or made it his estate or something, and like he knows the place. He's someone cool.
Yeah, and he takes you through it and you get to know his life. And if we're going to have a tour guide or a virtual tour guide, why stop at just the tour guide? What if you're going to turn the corner and you bump into a holographic version of his family that they join on the tour? You can ask them questions. Like, this is like Wikipedia coming to life as part of your trail.
Oh, that is very cool.
And we can go beyond guides. So we're all imagining this. I don't know if you guys are home still have your eyes closed. But if you do, if you want to close your eyes again, you can think about being on that hike. And you might have bumped into that tour guide from the beginning, or you might meet his family, but then he might have also had a house. So that house could then be shown where today there might be just a stump or a fence or something that shows us that house. We can see a reconstruction. There might be a fire, smoke blowing up. We could see a camp. We're not even limited by people. We could see also full events unfold in front of us.
The whole experience come to life.
Like an entire story, just like you're experiencing that. You can either join it or... So it's no longer just a hike, but you're getting historical. Also, it could be like even movies. If you come to places where like a movie or a TV show is set, you could have that guide be that character.
Like imagine hiking in New Zealand and having the whole Lord of the Rings characters come to life. That would be crazy. Like the whole like Lord of the Rings chases around you and being able to see that would be so fun.
Was the whole movie filmed there? Because I know there's, again, in Guatemala, I think it's called
I
Hobbitonango.
know, it's Hobbitonango. It's just a replica. It wasn't filmed there. It's all filmed in New Zealand, I think so, at least. Not in Guatemala.
So you can, okay, so everything was filmed there, so you can see the houses. But
You can see the houses, you can see the different scenes, like the chases or them chilling in the caves and the cow. So many possibilities, but then you're also hiking, which is so cool.
the houses themselves come to life with the characters. So you see the real houses as you see them now, but what augmented reality will be able to do is augment onto that characters running around, opening doors, doing their whole scenes and seeing the entire scene. And exactly, like you said, that would like completely change a hike. It becomes like an amusement park, almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got trail markers, trail guides. We've looked into different ideas of the person guiding you through it. And the way that, you might not even have necessarily, like, again, you could have the trail guide where you have no trail guide. You have no one actually walking you through it. You just have a path that you're following. So whether it's follow the other big road, whether it's breadcrumbs, whether it's highlighting rocks, it's coloring certain rocks, where it's just doing that light, whatever it is, you can just walk it and not have someone guide you through it. It's just, you don't get lost. The next thing I'm going to probably think about is like a hazard. So we can use augmented reality to show us, I think you gave an idea of a puddle, like in front of you.
Any potholes or any like depth in the ground that is not supposed to be there, it can suss out for that and let us know.
Augmented reality could probably put like let's say a holographic emergency, like those barriers they put around different things of saying there's danger here. Or if something like, let's say, looks like a puddle so I can visibly see it, but I don't know how deep it is. This might be something that my whole body can be submerged in rather than just a little splash. So the ideas of visualizing what could happen with issues, but also putting up signs or letting me know it doesn't have to be just tape, right? With augmented reality, we can make the hazard look anything. We can color it. We can make the place look like there's lava around it. We can go completely crazy because we're in the world, right? We're seeing the actual hike in front of us and we're just alerting to its danger in any way possible. Like we can visualize this in heaps of different ways. Oh, another thing is also showing weather.
Right.
It's like future weather. Like, how would you probably want to see future weather with augmented reality?
I would think about it in terms of, let's say I'm going on a long, like, couple hour hike, or I'm going up a mountain and down a mountain. Is there going to be a storm in the next couple hours? Is it going to be super sunny, super cold, super windy? Do I need a sweater? Do I need a lot of layers? Do I need boots? Should I not go right now because it's going to be bad? Do I need to come down? Super helpful. And if it could like show me the actual weather, what it will look like or what it will feel like, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things over here. A lot of this can work like when I'm even in the house and I'm getting ready for the hike. I can lay out all my clothes virtually on my bed to show me all the different layers. Or if I arrive at the actual site, it's one thing to get a warning of saying what's happening. It's another thing for it to be contextual over there. If you come to a hike and you literally see like a holographic, again, warning tape that's around it, or some information that's hovering right in front of it going, don't go, or make sure you're back by 5. Like these things right in front of you as you go through things help out a lot. And I think for me, for like weather, I'm just thinking, imagine if I'm hiking and at any point it could show me what's the worst type of weather in the spot I'm in 4 hours. So the entire weather could actually change. I could actually see rain falling in front of me. Or let's say it's snowing. I can see visibly that snow piling up in front of me. So it's one thing to go, okay, there's going to be like a quarter inch of snow or 3 feet of snow because we don't have it in Australia, so I don't go metrics. Being able to see that while I'm on the hike of it going, look, this is where the level of snow will be in 4 hours. If you're not done this hike and leave, you'll be in this spot. This is how much it's going to collect. And I can see it right in front of me and understand how dangerous. I can see those kind of things. I think it changed a little bit of like between someone saying it's going to be 1 foot and I have to think of that in my head to seeing what effect that future weather will have on the hike that's in front of me, the trail that I'm actually on.
You have direct information. It just processes immediately.
You don't even have to think about it. It just makes sense. And I think once augmented reality hits also the touch sense, imagine if you feel the raindrops.
And you can feel the wind hitting your hair and hitting the jacket. What will that actually feel like? How bad will it be if I'm in the middle of this windstorm in 2 hours or whatever?
You'll approach it very differently. You'll feel or at least see and really understand what the consequences could be if I decide to like think that I can make it or think that I can go ahead. So I think the weather is something the weather is something that once we go out in nature, a lot of people that live all their lives in cities, the weather doesn't come into it so much because, okay, I'll just go indoors, I'll be inside, I have air conditioning, I have a house that's going to stay up. But when you're hiking, extreme weather or even any weather that's beyond the norm, you could find yourself in a dangerous predicament. Imagine if you have enough rain that it could flood and you could like see things being swept, see trees in front of you being knocked down and swept out in front of you. That'll change your mind very quickly, whether you want to actually continue down this path or not.
That will exactly tell you what to do. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So the next thing I'm thinking about is like plants. If I'm going hiking, I want to know about vegetation, trees, things around me.
Absolutely. Yes. We want to be able to see what kind of plant it is, what it wants, how it grows, if it's poisonous, if you can eat it, what its qualities and properties are. That's so nice. And if you could see them like right in front of you, that would be so exciting.
And this is completely different. Like today, there's one thing about pulling out your phone and like disengaging from like the natural world around you. And it's a completely different thing to be looking at the actual plant in front of you and seeing. So you gave an example of like poisonous. Love that. Like seeing a plant and actually maybe have it pulse red. That's poisonous. So as humans, or at least...
And you could have even different levels of pulsing. So if it's pulsing red, then it's poisonous to touch. If it's pulsing yellow, it's poisonous to eat. If it's pulsing pink, it's only poisonous if you rub it in your eyes or whatever. So you get to see so much information in such direct and fast ways, which is cool.
And it's right over there. And we're not limited to what we can do. Like once we have augmented reality, we can design, so we can have different pulsing, we can have different speeds, we can have different colors. And not only that, it's accompanied by, it can be icons, it can be, again, your guide, your hiking guide could give you that information where he walks next to the plants and says, don't eat those. Or you can even ask and you say, hey, I'm walking on this path and I'm seeing that plant is pulsing red. Now I realize that the system's trying to tell me something, but I've never gone hiking. I don't really know what it means. Does red mean that the plant's trouble or that the plant is poisonous? And so your guide could walk over and give you that in a virtual way, right, as interactive. Or it could be just very basic text right next to it saying danger, do not touch. And all those different warnings could be there visually. But again, the biggest power of augmented reality is about context, right? Because if we remember, what is augmented reality? Well, when we look at computers, laptops, things like that nowadays, they can give us this information. If we Google and try to describe the plant or take a picture and then try use visual search, which again is a form of computer vision, which is one of the cornerstones of augmented reality, we can do that and get that information. But that's not what augmented reality is. Augmented reality, it's all in the context. It's where the digital and the real world overlap seamlessly. So today, there's such a separation between them. And even in the last couple of years where you can take a picture of something and then very easily look it up on Google, there's almost like that separation. You can see that disjointedness between what's happening in the real world, your interest, and then what's happening in the digital world. Augmented reality marries them together. It puts the digital world as a layer on top of the real world. And so that is giving you information about everything, right? So plant name could be written right next to any plant you'll look at. Remember also that we're going to be controlling augmented reality very naturally. One of the things that I believe the main way that you're going to be interacting. So if you look at your phone, what's the main way you interact? Your fingers, right? It's using this multi-touch technology that was invented or perfected before the iPhone and put into the iPhone. You're interfacing with computers with a desktop and mouse. With augmented reality, a very natural way of connecting with it, like you connect with other people, will be with your hands and your eyes. And there's a gesture that I designed in Meta in the early days of these glasses, which I called reticle gesture, which has now become a very core way that Apple wants to control the Vision Pro. And so they're basically using where you're looking to show like intention. And then the gestures that you're using can be micro gestures. And this basically marries far and near, distances that your hands can't reach because your hands are going to be anything that you can touch right now, which a lot of people think that's the way you're going to control augmented reality with your hands. But how do you control beyond that? So we're thinking, we can point at it, but if you point at it, it's not as precise the further you get. Now your eyes are very precise far away, but they can't necessarily deal or give me the differences because my eyes can give me intent, but my gestures, I can move my fingers in different ways. I can do different gestures. When you marry them together, what I call reticle gesture, I don't really know what Apple calls their version, but this is the way that is going to be a very magical way. It's magical because it's going to be seamless. That's going to be the way that you're going to be interacting with augmented reality. So remember, when I'm going on this hike, based on where I'm looking and my intent, so think about it. If my eyes are going to linger on a plant for a couple of seconds, it's probably because I want to know more about it. So when you think about augmented reality, don't think that every plant's going to be pulsing, or every plant's going to give me its name, or every plant is going to show me how much water it has or how much water it needs, or even the history behind it. It's going to be a lot more natural. So if I stop, linger on a plant, or if I show intent walking towards it, wanting to touch it, that's when the name can start appearing. Or if I'm very inquisitive, it can start learning what I'm so interested in, start surfacing that information to me. This is the AI component of it, but it's also the augmented reality component, the computer vision, the interaction with this that makes that very natural. It doesn't become robotic. It's not pulling out your phone and I have to visit Wikipedia or I have to do a Google image search. It's where my eyes looking at. What am I getting excited about? Maybe my blood's pulsing a little bit more, my pulse that my Apple Watch might be picking up. So we're going to be a variety of wearables. So if you think about it, again, when we go in on reality one, we're talking about a future where you're probably going to be interacting with augmented reality with glasses or contact lenses. I don't really primarily look at augmented reality being like mobile AR through the phone or the iPad, which you can hold up in front of you, and using the cameras and the screen, I can see information through that camera viewer. I don't really focus on that because to me, you can do augmented reality with that, but that's limited. For me, it's hands-free. These are what you can see through a pair of glasses or a pair of contact lenses. That's when they become seamless and magical. There's so much, and through that, so those are going to be wearables, right? You'll also have different parts of the computer that you'll be wearing the right places. So one way that I would explain it is if you took all the different technologies you have, right? So for me, that would be maybe a phone, a laptop, AirPods. For some other people, it'd be a watch, an iPad. There's so many things that they share very similar things. Like a lot of those devices have screens. Why do I need 5 different screens at different screen sizes? A lot of them have CPU inside of them. A lot of them have microphones, speakers. So they share a lot of components. The future of computers, in my belief, is that think of all your devices like imploding and then each part settling on a part of your face.
A lot more seamless.
And it goes on a part of your body. So anything got to do with vision goes on your eyes. So cameras or contact lenses. And anything got to do with sound goes close to your mouth. Anything that goes to do with hearing goes close to your ears. So all these parts will also be picking up biometrics. So the Apple Watch right now, I personally don't really the idea of another screen or things like that, but it's so useful with biometrics. So imagine if my Apple Watch is picking up excitement as my eyes are looking at something and using all that information, it's going, oh, you're probably interested in that plant over there. Let me either warn you about something or tell you information about it and really help with knowing about what's going on around you. So things I would like to know, hike, probably like name, highlighting the plant that's in question. So I can put a little ring. Actually, Apple has a really nice animation. Do you have an iPhone, by the way?
I do not have an iPhone, very proudly.
Okay, so this is not something that I can explain to you as much, but if you actually go, if you take a photo in your photos album, you can press and hold on an image. I'm doing it right now. And if it's not a live image, it'll do this really interesting animation, but it'll show you that it's pulling the item out. So it's using, it's really cool because it's pulling out, like, let's say, images that it notices. So especially with people, it'll pull out the actual portrait from the background and you can actually paste it anywhere. But it does this really interesting animation where it like shows you the actual image that it's cutting out. And then if you wait a little second, you've got this little like line that traces the shape of it.
A ring situation.
Yeah, it's like moving around. It looks really cool. Imagine seeing that around the plant that you're interested in.
Right. And what's also cool is that when you take a picture of, if you're trying to use one of those like plant apps where it tells you about the plant, you take one picture and then half the time like the app can't recognize what the plant is because it hasn't seen the right angle or hasn't. And here is the plant. This is exactly what it is. The AR can see it and recognize it and understand it immediately, which is so much better.
Yeah, you actually make a really good point. Let's look at this for a second. When you do a lot of visual lookups, or whatever Google calls it, anything that uses computer vision, because all this is computer vision, pulling out a portrait from a background's computer vision, understanding the type of plant is all computer vision. It's the idea of training a computer of understanding what it can see. When you're doing that, you're usually using one image.
Exactly. This is like it gets to see the whole entire image so it can make sure it's actually the right information because it has all the visual.
Precisely. It's not going to get really confused about it because until you actually come and approach the plant, you've seen that from different angles, with the sunlight, without the sunlight. It's seen it from all different contexts around it, all different angles. What we're saying is It's more like a video. If you want to look at it in terms of pictures, it's getting hundreds of frames of images of information. And so it's understanding what that plant is very easily. Another cool thing, probably seeing the inside of it, like an X-ray. I know we've had trees that fall, and sometimes in the jungle or something, they'll have a sign next to it saying, count how many rings it is. That's how old it is. Seeing this kind of information that today requires specific little signposts that have to be very thought out because you can't just talk about everything. AR allows you to have access to everything, all information at once, and it's interactive. It's there. So it doesn't have to be that someone stuck the sign up carefully a year ago. It's here's new information, here's updated information. Here, I'm giving you information also interactively. So I can give you a lot of pieces of videos, context, name, things like that in the right time as you go through.
And it's also cool if you can see the inside of a plant or the inside of a tree, like what an extra experience. You get to see what's going on inside. Very cool. If there's like little ants inside or little animals. So fun.
That'd be really cool, like seeing colonies where like all you're seeing is like ants coming out the outside. And a lot of us see, let's say, structures of a termite mound that goes underneath, and they like where they put in metal, the molten metal, and then when it solidifies, they pull it out and you can see the whole network. Here, you can visualize that with augmented reality, looking through and without disturbing it. There's another thing that I was thinking about. Oh, I don't know the term of it, but like the idea that all roots in a jungle are interconnected.
Yeah, I don't know what the term is either, but if you could see that, like you could see the web of roots underneath the ground, wow.
And I'm thinking like pulsing from like Avatar.
Yeah.
Exactly. Seeing veins like pulse through and seeing how everything connects with each other. We talked about plants in probably the first or second episode. The idea was about plants in your rooms, and we went through like how you can visualize how much water they need, if they need to be watered, things like that. And again, that will apply to here. You can see how, not only how they're connected, but if they're dry. Also diseases, like we talked about plants over there. Maybe you see dark spots. Not only do you get to know information about a plant of the basic plant, but the computer vision will pick up any diseases that are known to mankind that we have information about of what they look like. It'll pick those diseases up and say, here, this plant is called such and such, and it's actually suffering right now from this disease. And it will highlight those little, here are black dots on the leaves, and that's how you know that it's suffering from disease.
If I could hop to scuba diving for a real quick second, when I was learning to scuba dive, and like our guide would swim past this coral and be like, this coral is dead because of this thing, or has this disease because of this thing. And it's very cool to be able to look at a plant directly and know what's wrong with it or what's going on, what's the issue stemming from. It's a lot of really cool information to be able to have immediately.
DL is actually a dive master, which is pretty epic. I've done definitely a couple of dives, but information about stuff actually probably applies a lot more to diving. Because with plants and the trails that you go in the forest, it's very likely that there's a hiking
reference for what you're seeing. Whereas like in the ocean, you're just ocean, big wide world. There's like things like, let's say like the pathway to follow, or those are actually very useful in the ocean when there's not as much like topography to be able to follow around. So that's cool.
You're getting ahead of me because I wanted to also think about the idea that currents are massive in the ocean. If you could visualize them, like I think when you dive a lot of times and you start learning how to see things, it's like also like certain birds. We're going into so many different topics, but like birds can see turbulence, right? Most of us can't see. The idea of augmented reality could also start visualizing things that we have instruments to pick up, but we don't know how to see properly. Magnetic fields, currents, things like that could be really cool. But what I'm thinking of is like when I've gone to a lot of hikes that are organized by like these rangers and stuff like that, it's very set. And so therefore, I'm not surprised when I come to a tree and there's a little placard stuck into the tree or next to it telling me the name of it. I don't think I've ever seen that diving.
You can't really do that as much because you can't, first of all, they really frown upon sticking things into the ocean. But also, the ocean moves. It's very changing all the time. So you can't really do that, which is, again, why this would be so helpful, because it would always exist there. Whenever you dive in, you can see all the little pieces of information that are just chilling above in the ocean. That would be cool.
Yeah, it's pretty frowned upon to stick anything into coral. Can't even go and touch it. I don't think there's any places that you can actually touch coral. I know there's places that like you can really be fined and get into a lot of trouble. But the point is that when you can put that information and you can put little park signs up with lots of information and history, and you can have little rest stops. I know when we go hiking, when we hiked up Catanengo, we had like rest stops, and there you have a whole map and you can get information about the hike as you're going up. Think of all those icons on the maps in augmented reality. So that's what we're looking at. But like, you can't do that in the water. Exactly. If you did want to get information, you've got hand signals, or you've got your little like whiteboard type of thing where you can write a bit of things. But unless you have a whole folder of laminated images or like a whole slideshow that you presented, you can't talk, you can't present it, you can't do anything. Augmented reality can not only highlight or show us the visuals of these things, we can have an entire animation, entire 3D models. We can point out fish. So if a fish is swimming close by, augmented reality can put something on top of it, an arrow, and let you know, hey, look out. The water can be maybe murky. You might not expect to see that fish because they can. I know one of our dives, they showed us like all the different fish or sea creatures that are in that area that we could see. Okay, you might see these ones, but you might not. And there's an image of 50 different things. But augmented reality can point them out exactly as you go in.
It can tell you like how rare a fish is, especially if you're a newer diver and you don't really know what you're looking at. It could be like, this is a super rare fish, or this is of this species, and or like, that's a green moray eel. Go look at that little flash of something. Like, it can really help navigate those waters.
Let's build off that, because the diving is adventure, right? And this whole part is not just hiking, it's adventure. We're not going to go too far out of hiking, but like the thing I'm just thinking as it's coming into my mind as we're talking, you're able to know more about it. Also, great computer vision, especially when things are personal. You can actually see if there's a fish that keeps coming every day. It can say, not only is this a Glen Moray, but his name is Paul. And he's actually 16 years old and he keeps swimming and he comes around every day. Just like human beings can learn how to see the details in fish and recognize them very well. There's no reason why your computer vision system can't be hooked up to this specific dive site that knows that Paul comes along. And they know that Paul has a little dot over there and we can recognize him and we can track him and trace him.
I think even more if you're using this in the sphere of you're a dive master, this is like a constant place that you're at, then even more. Of course, your computer can start to learn all the different fish around, all the different things going on, and can alert you, oh, you're leading a dive here. The octopus that lives here, is he out today? Is he going to come? Is he going to be there? Is he going to be fishing somewhere else? Or, oh, there's a shark swimming by. Make sure your group is alert and paying attention.
I think we're seeing so many options. As you said, like that alert thing. Yeah, we can see like a flashing, again, alert banner that lets us know, you know what, in these waters, there's something close by. Or even if we go very quickly, like just like the depth you're in, right? We can always look at our clock and see it. But imagine if you had like a virtual or holographic ruler type of thing that went down and showed you your depth visually in front of you.
Or like even change the like color or experience of what's too low. So you could immediately tell if you're in the right depth or not. Even, oh, now I'm in like purplish water or whatever it is. Now I'm in hazy water or whatever it is. And then you don't have to be paying attention so much. You can just be staying in the zone.
I'm sure we could also find ways that are like beyond just like color. Like I was just thinking, can you see when like water boils a little bit and becomes hotter, how it starts giving up those like fumes and you can start seeing like temperature differences. Like I wonder what different ways we can visualize, not just color.
If it could be opaque, or if it could be like, I know if you dive through different kinds of water, like sulfuric water, and the water literally looks hazy and like you can't see properly. So if it could do something like that where it's so clearly, this is not where you're supposed to be. You're too deep. Don't, And then what's even cooler is it could tailor it to different divers. So if you're, let's say like, you can only dive at 18 meters and somebody else can dive at 30 meters, but you're in the same ocean. But it's like here, this diver will see you can't go past here, and this diver will see you can't go past 30 meters.
I'd probably just ignore their signs, knowing me. Oh my God, like now I'm just thinking about like diving. There's so many, also like when you're in emergency, there's so many like hand signals that we use. I don't know if you've used this, but I actually just had it in a WhatsApp call the other day. And actually we were both surprised because I didn't realize that this thing worked on WhatsApp. Okay, what it was is you can do different hand gestures, and iOS 17, so it's built into Apple, so any video and conference can use it. So WhatsApp was using it. But if you do like a thumbs up, it does like a little bubble of the thumbs. Or if you do, I think it's like the peace sign, you can see fireworks come around you. I'm going to show you this. Everyone check this out of what it looks like. But it's using anything that you want to say. Here it's like different things, right? Fireworks or balloons coming up or things like that. And it also uses depth. So
that would be fun. So if you were in the ocean and you had to do OK symbol, but it would like magnify that, or OK symbol whenever a diver does OK, it like makes little frogs hop around. I don't know. But it would make it very obvious to everyone around. So it's not like I have to get your direct eye attention, because in the water, that's the only way you can talk to somebody's directly making eye contact. Whereas like here, it could be like, okay, I make the okay symbol and that does something big. So everyone around me knows what that symbol happened, that person communicated.
Because everybody's wearing their own glasses, right? It's built into, let's say, your goggles. So if I'm behind you, and like you're saying, this happens so many times where you're trying to get the attention of someone that might be a couple meters in front of you. And until they actually look around, you can't do much. You can maybe try and make enough sound with your mouth to try to get their attention, but you also don't want to use up too much oxygen. But here, you could do some sort of gesture. Your computer system of your glasses recognizes that you're doing a gesture and can either send that to the vision of the person in front of you to either tell them to look around or let them know. I'm visualizing like this. I don't know if there's some movies where you do something in the water and there's a huge disturbance from what you do. So like you could visualize some sort of disturbance at the person in front of you. Their system sees a huge disturbance and that lets them know there's something behind you.
It's cool to think about like for different things. Let's say you're out of air. Okay, that creates a huge disturbance versus just turn around or whatever, where it doesn't have to do anything in the water. It doesn't have to be anything major. It could just be like a small little, instead of me having to scramble and get your attention and pull on your fin, I could just literally send like a ding. Hi, I'm here.
Awesome. Let's look at oxygen actually for a second. It looks like this. I'm wondering now, we should have done like a diving one, a separate diving one, because all the things are coming up with diving. This is very similar to a video that I made with a Tesla of showing like the charging indication. But how do you know when you're out of oxygen? Things like that. Besides realizing that your breath is going, you've obviously...
You have to manually check all the time, like all the time.
Exactly. You got to check your equipment. And for me, whenever I'm looking at my meter, like I have to like move myself in a certain way because of how my hoses are tied. And when I bring it out, I'm like angling my head and I have to try look in a weird way, right? It's definitely, I'm not enjoying as I'm going through. Now, this whole process is going to take me 3 seconds, right? 4 seconds. It's not...
Takes you out of the process. And especially as a dive master, the person who's leading the dive and has to stop swimming so they can turn around and make eye contact with each individual person and ask them for their air. So if one person can have all that information, then no one has to interrupt their dive. They all just know.
Imagine if AR showed you the kind of indication. Now, I know oxygen doesn't work this way because it's more of a gas, but obviously, imagine if your tank was quote-unquote transparent and you could see that gauge of where it's up to. So if you have a glass of water, no one's asking a question of when's that glass empty or when's it nearly empty, because we can see that level of water transparent. So with augmented reality, the most natural way of understanding not only our oxygen, we wouldn't because the oxygen's behind us, but for the dive master to be able to see everybody's oxygen, if they could just glance at someone's tank and see the level exactly where it is and also color it in. So it's very obvious where, you know, it's like a battery indicator. Think of a battery indicator, but superimpose augmented on top of someone's tank. And beyond that, it's not just the level. I can see how many minutes, how much time you have left. Now, we have computers that are able to give us a very good approximate based on your past diving experience, how old you are, how fast you breathe. If you start breathing faster, obviously you're taking up air a lot quicker. That information could be on huge numbers on the side of the tank, which looks like it's, let's say, painted on the tank for all intents and purposes. So imagine like looking at other people and like literally seeing like a battery indicator of level and a battery percentage of like number showing you the oxygen level. Instead of you having to angle into this tiny little meter and look in, or your guide, your dive master, had to indicate you and ask you and show you. Because now we basically show in our hands how much we have left, how much time we have left, how much bar we have left. Over here, you don't need to do all those. Because as a diving instructor, I could look at 6 people around me and just have a glance at their oxygen tank, very visually seeing the level it's at or the remaining air that they have in that tank ticking down.
It could start pulsing or beeping or whatever if you're like very low on air and no one's paying attention. So it could also play into a lot of different fields where it could be super helpful.
Augmented reality is like so visual, and the way that we communicate is usually through our words. And down under the water, you can't.
The most necessary here, like it could really change the entire diving experience.
I think next time you go diving, you're going to be seeing the diving world in a completely different way.
So
we've discussed a little bit of ways of like how it helps us and gives information. But you can also have games, interactive games, like put different markers that you have to swim to.
So we actually have one of the things that you have to learn when you're doing open water, advanced open water diving is that we do different kinds of games inside the ocean, which are fun to do with real things, but it could be also super fun to have different games like keeping your buoyancy levels, just having different kinds of skills that you need to learn under the water. You have to do navigational skills. All those things could be done with augmented reality. You could have somebody like a little guide that you have to follow, or we have a search and rescue things that you have to learn. That could all be done with augmented reality. And then it's so much easier to set up. It's so much easier to figure out. And again, it's under the water, like changes the game if you have visual.
Things become a lot more intuitive. Like, I think depth is a huge part because like we were just like I'd mentioned a couple minutes ago of the holographic tape measure. All the depths, like you were saying, are like different depths you can go in. Like some people can dive to 18 meters, some people 30. You're also looking at depth, like shallow depths, right? So there's certain levels that you can't go because there's boats around and you just can't breach that. If that's very easy to see like a red line that kind of sits somewhere in the ocean, that when you breach it, you can visibly see that you're like going through. If it looked like a yellow mist or something like that, or think of a yellow, I think my visualization is like the surface of a bubble, but like in the water, colored. And if I breach it, I can see that I popped it or something like that.
Very cool.
And you can use those things to know, A, are you going down to the depth, or are you ascending too quickly? Or are you coming within those couple meters of the surface that you should not be hitting? Being able to see that information that you're ascending too quickly, you're coming into a danger zone of boats. And if there is a boat, we can also warn that very visually with a warning barrier saying boats nearby, things like that. All these things that we use, lines and indicators and flags.
Computers, like all the information that a computer has in the dive watch, it tells you you're going up too fast, or you have to have a surface interval of this amount of time. You can't dive, you're going below depth or whatever it is. It's all of that information is visually right in front of you. You're going up too fast. You have pulsing light in front of you, or you have someone like an arrow pointing down or whatever it is that visually shows you this is where you should go.
You've got quite the imagination. You use a watch today, a dive watch, and you've got a dive computer built into that, and some people have too, and there's so much information that it gives from all the different sensors that are connected to your tank, that are connected to different parts. But to have that free itself from those 2-3 inches, that little circle, that tiny little piece on your wrist.
And also not require you to actively be looking at it. Like it shows it to you right in front of you, so you don't have to be thinking about it actively. And again, like you said before, if you're somebody who's diving constantly and your computer gets to know you and gets to know your habits. So for me, I have to ascend very slowly. I have a really hard time with it. So my computer could tell me, oh, calm down, you're going too fast, versus somebody else who has an easier time. It will update to that. Tells you how much your air is or how your air consumption or things like that based on your past dives and that's all around you in front of you the whole time, just giving you all the information you need, but only when you're on it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a very good, that's a very important point to make, that we're not going to overload you with things, right? Just if you have too little information, that's not good. Just like if you have information, but that's on your watch and you're not glancing at the right things are not that good. Overloading with you too much is also not good. But taking things from your wrist, tiny little numbers or indicators, and visually representing them around you as if you're like living in this world changes the game. And like you were talking about, when you have a dive master and you've got a whole group, you don't see their clocks. You're relying on them to give you gestures with their hands to be able to.
You're also relying on them to be paying attention and to give you the right information, that they know what they're talking about. And often you have divers or dive masters who are leading divers who are very inexperienced. Somebody's not paying attention to their air, and somehow you're 30 minutes into a dive and they're a very heavy breather, and they only have a tiny bit in their tank left, but they weren't even paying attention, and you have to be the one who's not responsible for that, and hoping that they're actually going to be fine and figure out what they're supposed to do, which they're inexperienced, they won't.
It's a big difference between having to perform an emergency ascent with them or being able to get that information as the master while looking at them and seeing it from afar, of seeing that things are going wrong. You can think of everything. It's not just oxygen, it's not just timing, it's not just depth, right? They might be like panicking a little bit. These things might not necessarily be conveyed to you in the right way, and be able to visually see them. And there's so much, like we said, things are visual. You can't use your mouth to communicate. There could be dangerous animals around. You might be getting too close to the reef. You might be descending too fast. You might be ascending too fast. You got to watch your oxygen and keeping timing of how long, when you do your ascent, how long do you stay here? What depth do you have to come up to? And now you got to stay here for a minute or 2 minutes. Okay, now you can keep going. All these things to visually represent to you, around you, that you're in, and the dive master being able to see that, your instructor being able to see that, that is a completely different area. And not to mention game that we did.
Right. And what's also cool is that you can use this for totally inexperienced divers, for teaching inexperienced divers, and then you can also, the possibilities with tech diving, with technical diving, with all of these very, very complicated down in the depths of the ocean where you can't see anything, or where you're trying to drill a hole in the bottom of some hull of a ship. There's just so many possibilities where the visual availability of information is so useful.
Now you're going to DIY. I have a video, again, recommend you guys to go watch these 2025. I have a video fixing the fridge that uses context, uses, let's say, turn-by-turn instructions, like you have turn-by-turn navigation, where it walks you through an issue, and instead of nowadays finding like a very complicated manual or having to call someone who's an expert, if you had turn-by-turn instructions, like an IKEA set, but very visual, gives you exactly what you need to do in this moment, focus on this, what to look out for, that changes the game with what we can do. Underwater takes it to a whole new level of highlighting where you need to drill, or beyond the DIY, like you were talking about, outlining a fish that's coming at you from murky waters or dark places that you normally can't see. All those things of seeing in nighttime, like each one has their different senses, like you have night vision goggles. Those things can technically be baked into augmented reality glasses or things like that in the future.
Vision goggles into diving. Crazy. And also hiking, for the record, because night vision goggles into hiking, then you can start doing night hikes and not be worried about what's coming at you or if you're safe, and also there's so many cool animals to see at night.
I'm glad that you brought us back to diving. Sorry, hiking. Because we were having too much fun in the diving. But yeah, coming back to hiking and the animals, being able to see them in the dark. There's a show that's on Apple TV. I can't remember. It's like a National Geographic type of thing where it shows you animals. But they use this technology. I don't know the official name, but what is crazy about it is it's using a camera that basically makes it, you're shooting at night and you don't realize it because it looks like daytime.
I've seen this show. It's super cool. All of the life in colors, like all of the seeing how the animals are in different colors. And that would be so cool if you had the augmented reality version where like you literally see what the true color is or what the other animals see as their color. Wow.
We're really getting back into the animals. Yeah, again, I would love to, like, if I can remember what the show is, I'm going to put it down in the show notes. But to be able to see that information while you're going, highlighting animals' outlines, being able to see this information, even seeing animals. So if you're hiking in a certain place and animals are usually there, don't wait until you go to a museum that has a stuffed brown bear or something like that and they know information about it. With augmented reality, we can have that bear come into your path, roar, do its thing, go around, be interactive, and get information about it and understand that there's bears around there. So just like we saw with diving and just like we saw with plants, augmented reality can not only tell us about animals around us, but actually bring them really.
It could actually impact. What's also cool is that it could also highlight if there are animals around. Let's say there's a snake hiding under this rock that you wouldn't necessarily know about, but now it's augmented reality.
And it'll use all these sensors that today we might not be used to having them, but soon, because we have augmented reality, it might make sense to build them into things that we wear. We might have these sensors built into Apple Watches of the future. We might have these sensors built into the glasses that because we have the visuals to be able to get actually use out of it, it might make sense that they exist over there. Like you were talking about, like seeing a snake, another thing is like seeing a print of an animal. If I can understand the animal and then make a holographic 3D version of that animal as what they looked like stepping through this using their footprints, their paw prints from 3 hours ago, I can then see that actual animal, walk around it and get information that shows me like that holographic version and really understand, oh, this animal walked here. And maybe the better computer vision, it can tell us this walked here 3 hours ago while it was raining. We can get all that in a scene right in front of us.
Doe that's 3 years old, it weighs this amount, that, you know, like all this, all the information. That'd be really cool.
Oh, it's okay. So there's so much about it. Let's just quickly talk about different seasons. So we talked about the weather, but again, while we're hiking, we can see what this trail looks like in another season, right? Snow. We can look at how the foliage would change, which might entice us to come back here at another time. So those are different things. Just to finish off with the animals and to find our way back home, the same way that we've used navigation, we'll also use that information to find our way back. So we'll have the path that traces the way back. But also if we don't notice different pieces of the navigation, not only is our system obviously using GPS and putting way back points, like little breadcrumbs that are finding us back, it might highlight different things that maybe if we don't know our way back, it could highlight a tree and say, does this tree look familiar? And help you learn skills to understand how to find your way back, or saying.
So you can maybe have like different levels of skill. If you're a beginner, it gives you a little bit more information. But if you're like advanced or medium or whatever, you have like different levels so you can slowly learn more.
It becomes like a game. We don't have to treat it like an emergency. If you think you're lost, it can turn into an interactive educational lesson of going, okay, we know that you're a little bit experienced. So instead of showing you the way back because we know it, we can actually pinpoint things out or say, hey, what do you think about that? What about this rock? Or you can highlight and make it a game as you make your way back to the car because
it's time to go home.
It's time to go home. Hiking's done. Also diving's done because we went on a dive. You know what? I wonder if we're going to do a diving thing. We went through a lot with diving, so I don't know if we're going to do a whole one, but there was a lot in that.
The last thing I think is very cool. This could change your game with kids also, because now you can send your kids out on a hike or on a dive and feel way more secure about it because you know that they can get home by themselves. They can be alert or aware of any dangers or anything incoming that they need to be protected from, or just don't eat that plant, don't touch that fish or whatever it is. But there's a sense of safety around that. So you can let your kids go play out in nature and feel way more secure about it.
That is... okay, let's just go on that. I wanted to finish this before an hour, but I don't think we're going to have it. There's so much over here because we've been seeing this, or at least I've been seeing this and picturing this through my lens. And right at the end, we talked about this idea of different levels of learning how to make your way back, right? A novice will have the whole trail with flaming torches on either side, tiki torches guiding him back. And other people, it gets progressively harder. It doesn't have to stick with adults, right? This is with kids and training them. So you don't need specific scouts type of training over here. When you go with kids, their system that they have, right? They're not playing games and things like that. They're fully immersed here because their system is teaching them on their level. So when it's teaching them plans or what not to do or how to hike or things like that, the system's guiding them through it. And that's like a massive.
Right. And also, let's say even with plants, right? So it's, you have all this information about a plant, but you're not going to give the same kind of information to an adult as you would a child. But if it has all the sensors that are connected to that child's understanding or that child's level of interaction, then it can tell you, here's this plant, here's 5 facts about it, not 15 facts about it. And then what's even cooler is you can have lazy parents or chilling parents that are just like, I want to go for a picnic, set themselves down and just have the kids go out and explore and come back and have a whole fun day where everyone feels safe and has information.
So I want to go back again to this, the ideas. I always go back to them. So I've got navigational ideas, right? Episode 7. Follow the Olympic Road was the idea of digitally painting the path, right? And we saw how we can use that here in different things. It doesn't have to be just blue, right? In a car, we probably make it as simple as possible, but as subconscious as possible that you're following without it impeding on things because you're going fast and things can become dangerous. And when you go through that path in a forest, that instead of just painting it, it could be tiki torches or all these different visuals. Now, that concept that I use for walking, which I don't know if I hope I've talked about it. I don't know. I can't quote an episode, but the same idea, call it follow the leader. Wow, I've said that so many times. So for people, when I'm thinking like walking, I'm not thinking of just painting the road. It's if you're following someone. And this works precisely with your point of having kids. Years back when I was working on the glasses, I was approached by Disney and we were going on these different ideas of like how Disney could use augmented reality. And one of the things that I gave them, which they never built, Google was supposed to make this thing. The idea back then was, what if you could have a Disney character guide your kid to school? And the idea was like, your kid has learned to trust Scooby-Doo. Now, when they go to school, why make it like a follow a map or something if that kid's system has him walking to school with Scooby-Doo? So his personal assistant, his AI, doesn't have to be this robotic thing that gives him instructions or just coloring the path. He could be walking with Scooby-Doo. And this is his AI that he has his personality, right? Think of ChatGPT, but all grown up. Think of ChatGPT merged with Siri, merged with augmented sound and ear and whisper and all these different technologies. That culminates in your child at 5 years old walking to school alongside Scooby-Doo that's guiding him how to get there, but also has character. So not just speaking about it. Scooby-Doo, let's say he's mischievous. So he could run off and turn the corner and hide himself for a second, that when the kid runs after him and looks around the corner, Scooby-Doo's waiting for him around the corner and they're playing kind of a game.
Like an interactive and enjoyable experience while it's also keeping him safe and keeping him in the right space and all that stuff.
Exactly. It's interactive and he's got character. It's that Disney character. So that was the idea over there. We can bring that into a hike where your kid's walking along with that guide. And you gave the idea of putting down a picnic and letting your kids go. But if you're enjoying the hike as well, if your kid has a companion, that companion could help educate that kid about what's going on, about either the hiking, oh, look, that mountain, that's pretty cool. Or look, the sunrise or the sunset's going to set right here, right? That's another thing with hiking where you've got, I know on your phone, and a lot of us hopefully already have discovered augmented reality with astronomy, where we can point our cameras with mobile AR at the sky and see all this information. And you have a lot of them where you can see that the sun's through the ground. Like if it's nighttime, you can see where its path is. So on a hike, it could show you exactly where to go or find the right location of where that sun will set soon. So that's just like a small thing. But yeah, over here, we're using guides, we're using augmented reality, we're using artificial intelligence to not just take you and make your hiking safer, but more educational. And doing that for your kids where it's teaching them where when you look at a plant, you might see the Latin name for that plant. That doesn't need to be shown to your 5-year-old. He might just see maybe a couple pictures of the plant or say, hey, you've seen this plant 5 times. Try find this again another 3 times on this trip. And
Very
that's
cool.
built.
That would be very cool. And then keeps them busy and also educational.
Exactly. Scavenger hunts, education, everything built in. Awesome. Next episode, I think, for you guys, it's going to be coming out soon. Again, hopefully these ones are going to come out a little bit faster. I think next one we might be going back home and doing dinner. And I believe our guest will be Menachem. We'll see if we have some time for that. That should be really exciting. Looking at preparing dinner, finding food, health benefits, things like that. Today, we had a lot of fun hiking and very randomly diving into some sort of lake we found and went for a dive.
Exactly. Why not?
These are the practical things that people go day to day in their life. Anyways, I hope you guys really enjoyed that episode as much as I did. You know what? Before we finish off, I'm going to give DL. Do you have any questions? Are there anything that you really want to know that you thought of during the podcasts? Or are there things that you're most excited about or things you got to look at in your future dives or hikes? I don't know. Is there anything on your mind that you're like, oh, I would love to know that?
I can tell you what's on my mind. So it's interesting to me in terms of, because I'm a person who loves nature and a person who loves the experience of what nature brings to you. So I don't want to pull from that experience. I don't want to overwhelm that experience. And I don't want it to be like, oh, I can't go scuba diving without augmented reality. I can't go hiking without augmented reality. But I appreciate the fact that this is something that overlays onto the world. So it's like, it's not like I'm going on a hike and I'm being thrown into a whole different world. It's like I'm going on a hike and this information can pop up for me when I'm ready for it. Or again, that it could be on different levels. I'm a person who really loves hiking a lot. So when I go on a hike, I might not necessarily want that whole visual experience that seems like an amusement park, but somebody else might. And we can go on a hike together and both have those different experiences. That's where I think it's really cool. But it does weigh on my mind a little bit that I don't want us to move so far into this reality where we don't actually get the beauty and the rawness of nature.
Super interesting. I think that's a very good question to think about as we move through this. And I think like the answer is everyone's going to answer themselves. It's a very personal thing of how, I think it comes on the question of, do we rely on technology too much? What happens if other parts of our life will get impaired? And I think that's a question I'm going to also ask you. And if you have any answers on this, comment down below. But it's a very interesting question. There's actually so many questions here. Like some of the questions are, just because we can do that, doesn't mean should we? The idea of will this become too much of a crutch? Will we stop learning how to live our life properly? But on the other hand, do you stop yourself from exploring and building, and I would probably argue evolving yourself and the human race forward because you think it's a crutch? Does this become a superpower or a crutch in the future? Will you lean too heavily on it? I think that this is something that every person has for themselves. For me, I think my approach is a little bit more of like, we are evolving. ourselves. And if we can, let's do it. Obviously, you want to do it in a proper way, but every person's going to take it the way that they want to. I see these things as superpowers. Yes, there are some technologies that when we don't have it, we start not knowing how to live. And I think if it comes down to an addictive way, you probably want to steer away from that. We probably don't want that as much. But I think like with everything, there's so many things in our life that we take for granted and we can't live without. We don't see that as a bad thing. We see that as, that's just how, like temperature, for example, some of us can deal with certain temperatures. Some of us have evolved to not care about certain things. But as a whole, I think there were times in history where those people were better adapted and we're not as adapted. Do we look at that and go, oh, I wish our ancestors had stayed in this land and adapted to this kind of heat or this kind of cool or this kind of food? It's something that moves and keeps going. And as a human species, we should keep moving. That's, I think, generally what I think. But everybody should approach us. And like we spoke about with kids and personalization, that's how you can set up your system.
Right. I think that's what I appreciate the most about this is that everybody can have their really, truly own experience while still being together, but experiencing their own thing. And it's so movable. It's so changeable.
And very personable. It's ultimate PC, the ultimate personal computer. Anyways, there's lots to think about. We did a lot in today's episode. We talked about tomorrow's episode, or I keep saying yesterday's and tomorrow's. Next episode. Until then, thanks guys for joining. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you enjoyed hiking. And I hope that the next time you go hiking and the next time you go diving, that these visuals pop up in front of you. And not only do you see what we discussed, I hope that you guys also come up with your own ideas of what you would have included in your hike and your dive. And please share them. Like, comment anywhere that you hear this podcast. Give me your experiences, your thoughts, answer the question. And until then, I'll see you guys in the future.